Shirley and I are here this afternoon to talk to you about the NBK and the Library Hub services built on top of it. I'm going to start off and then I'll hand over to Shirley partway through. There are some of you in this call, I'm sure, who can probably do a better introduction to the NBK and the Library Hub services than I can by this point. And to those people, I do apologise. And I hope you'll thank you for coming along anyway and sticking with us. For those of you who aren't familiar, the NBK is the National Bibliographic Knowledge Base, and it's a large aggregation of catalogue data from, the slide says 167 libraries. We've actually added one more since I did these slides, which is a very nice demonstration that we are actually a growing aggregation. So this data at the moment powers three Library Hub services: Discover, Compare and Cataloguing. The Discover service is completely open, freely available to anyone to use it. The Compare service and the Cataloguing service are for Jisc members, but also for NBK contributors. So if your library sends us data, then you have access to those services as well. When the data comes in to the NBK, it goes into two separate databases. One of those runs the Discover and Compare services, and that holds all of the data that we're sent. The Cataloguing service holds a subset of the data for various reasons: data that's sent to us in non-MARC format, or is poor quality, or is not licensed for redistribution in MARC format, can't be loaded to that database. So Discover and Compare, when we say deduplicated, this slide sort of illustrates that quite well. We have taken records from those 19 libraries to create a single record that you can see here. Now, most of those libraries are HE libraries, as you can see. There's also the British Library, and we've got some special libraries. We have a public library, Manchester Public Libraries. Now, we're not primarily a public library catalogue. We're not interested in the circulating stock, really, but rare material, special material, collections of sort of local history interest, that sort of thing we are very interested in. And also we have material from the Hattie Trust Digital Library available, and we're going to be adding more online open access sources. That's particularly important at the moment, as part of Jisc's response to the COVID-19 crisis, we have rearranged the result sort order in Discover because we decided it wasn't actually particularly useful to be directing people in the first instance to closed libraries when there may be an online version of the material that they were looking for. So the sort order at the moment is you'll first see open access and then online and then print at the end. You can, of course, continue to use the search parameters to pick print material if you want to, if you're making your wish list for when the libraries properly open up again. We also have, to help you navigate Discover the large result sets quickly, we've recently introduced a toggle, so you can toggle between the expanded and condensed view. And I'm quite proud that I managed to create a GIF. Please excuse me, I am old and slightly boring. We also have introduced recently a branch library search. This is particularly useful for geographically distributed libraries, collections such as the National Trust, for things like the Oxbridge with the college libraries, or where you know that there is a concentration of material in a particular subject area within a certain branch library in libraries collections. So that is another useful thing. I know I did not start again. Here we are. The Library Hub cataloguing service. This is for the download of MARC records for use in your local catalogue. It has a Z3950 interface and a web interface. And if you've used the web interface, you will know that it doesn't currently look like this slide at all. It looks quite significantly different. So that's one of the things that we are working on at the moment. We are redeveloping the, redesigning the web interface so that it fits with the Library Hub service look. We are also doing a review of the database structure. and that's something that we hope to have some more information out to the community about later this month. So we will be doing some communications and probably some asking for some feedback around that fairly soon. So please do look out for that. I'm going to hand over to Shirley now, who's going to talk to you about Library Hub Compare.
So as Beth mentioned, Library Hub Compare gives you collection analysis facilities, and as included in the slide, in case you've not seen it, collection visualizations, but also download, so you can take data from Compare and combine it with local information such as circulation activity. There's been quite a lot of development of Compare over the past year. I've included a few of the things in here, particularly revised export formats and the branch library search. Some of this has come through collaboration with the British Library in response to their requirements for UKRR activity, but obviously it also has benefits for other libraries. So it's been quite a busy year. Moving on to the current year, coming year, if I could have the next slide. For some libraries, it's becoming quite a key tool for supporting library collection management activity. This is focusing minds, obviously. Times are changing, finances are very constrained. So work's carrying on with Compare interface. And there's a webinar being planned for later this year to get user input on the range of developments being considered. One of them is going to be around the UKRR flag, how we use that in Compare, but also retention data, and I'll mention this again later on, something that has been requested by users and that is particularly interesting to allow them to make decisions about collections, understanding what other people's long-term plans are for their own collections. Can I have the next slide, please? So moving on to developments for the coming year generally, the one thing that would improve Library Hub services across the board and make it easier for us to actually deliver those services is to support improvements in record quality. It's not just of technical interest in terms of shared cataloguing, but it has a real impact in resource discovery, as well as our ability to deduplicate, which in turn affects collection management and also the ease with which researchers can actually use the NBK as a research resource. I'm sure you're all well aware that most catalogues have their darker corners. Any catalogue with a long history is likely to have records of varying quality and completeness. And for us, this diversity is multiplied across many other catalogues. And it's something that we're looking at in a variety of ways. Now, in the past, for COPAC and the RDK database, we pre-processed the data and cleaned it up, which is great, but it takes a lot of time. The scale, the number of libraries we're working with now would make that quite hard. And it's not a one-off activity. The data has to be monitored. A fix that we do now could actually introduce problems with data later on, or new sources introduce new data variations, which have to be resolved. And obviously, if we're cleaning data up centrally, it doesn't benefit the local catalogue and local users. So this time, with the NBK, we decided we'd take a different approach, and we want to look at how we could support contributing libraries to identify problems with the data and resolve them locally. So one of the things we're thinking of for this year is to pilot a Library Hub Analyze service for release in the middle of next year sometime. So as for the other Library Hub services, it's based on the data being supplied for the NBK, but it's not deduplicated data. It will be the original supplied data. So we're creating a new undeduplicated database with a whole range of new indexes. So for example, as on the slide, you'll be able to search on mark, tag and subfield codes. it'll have all of the data supplied by a contributor, suppressed or not, so that it can then be made available just to that contributor only. And we're using an open source data visualization interface that allows us to experiment with different forms of data presentation, the kind of graphs you can see here, charts, pie charts, all that kind of thing. We want to answer general questions such as, I'm seeing errors in records from a particular ebook supplier. Is this a general problem with their records? And what are the areas I might want them to focus on improving? So initially, we're building in tests for the correctness of the basic mark structure. And as you can see on the slide, we've got things like O2O, missing subfields, invalid indicators, that kind of structural issues. We also did work earlier in the year looking at a measure of record quality, which will provide a way of assessing data across a range of different issues rather than just on a field by field basis. We got quite a lot of input on this from a wide range of libraries, and we were very appreciative of that. That's been really useful for us. So the first stage of Library Hub Analyze is to help identify problem data. If it seems useful, it doesn't just duplicate what you can do in your library system or elsewhere, then we'll look at more detailed error checking, more warnings of potential problems, and also look at how we go from identifying a set of records that would benefit from upgrade to actually supplying those better records. So you could replace your local record or just add missing fields so you don't lose local content. Improving data quality locally obviously then feeds back into being better for us. We get better records back, but it also makes other things possible. So working with other data formats, looking at linked data, authorities, it all becomes easier and more feasible when we have consistent, higher quality data. But the one thing I do have to say is, as with everything we do now, and I'm sure it's the same with you, we have to look at the business case and think about how an analyze service will develop, what the costs are involved in developing and supporting another new service. So it may be that some aspects of the service are chargeable to some users. So another side of this is, thank you, Contribute. Library Hub Contribute is largely used by system staff at the moment. It's used for our contributor questionnaires, documentation. We're moving to a new version of the interface, which you can see a 2/3 complete version here. It's on its way. That should be out this month. But over the next 6 to 8 months, we want to develop this further and start including things of more general interest, like usage information, feedback on usage of Discover. So who's checking holdings for your library in Discover? But we also want to tie it into the data checking. Something we used to be able to do with the RLUK database was provide regular data feedback on people's update files. And we want to experiment with linking from the contributor website through to a Library Hub Analyze, so that as you send us updates, we can provide immediate data feedback on those update files on an ongoing basis, rather than just the sort of project-orientated data view that Analyze would normally provide. And moving on beyond the services themselves, first thing we wanted to say was simply thank you to all of those who are contributors to the NBK. We're very appreciative of your work, particularly that of your systems staff who are sending your catalogue and sending us regular updates. It's through your commitment to the NBK as a national endeavour and your regular, reliable data supply that means we can provide you with the services you need. So at heart, the NBK is a collaboration, but beyond the basic service provision, the NBK means there is potential for new collaborative activity, or that existing collaborations may become easier or more effective, which definitely chimes with comments from other speakers this morning. and we're starting to see this happening. So some of the initial work's been around collection management, collection development. So retention statements, I mentioned earlier, is something that's come out of people working with Library Hub Compare, wanting to come up with a standardized retention statement, which we are now indexing, and that will become incorporated into the use of Compare over time. And it is starting to appear in people's catalogues, and that's something we want to encourage. And similarly, with the working with the BL on the UKRR, we're also interested in, is there a potential for a shared print monograph scheme? And is there a role for us there in supporting that and making that useful for people? So there's quite a lot of areas where we think collaboration can be supported. So if you've got ideas of things where you think you want to work with other libraries, but we might have a role in helping you do that, then we'd be very interested in hearing from you. So I guess perhaps in a broader way, when you're contributing to the NBK, there is a commitment to the NBK, but it's also a commitment to other libraries, as it's helping you to work with other libraries. It has a much broader application. And I'll pass back to Beth now.
Thank you, Shirley. So another thing that's happening sort of beyond the services is the NBK team is part of the Jisc Digital Resources Directorate, and we're currently undertaking a transformation to help us make the best use of our in-house expertise, reduce duplication of effort, and be more flexible in how we can respond to members' needs. Now, this is mainly internal, but I'm mentioning it here because you may see some hopefully very beneficial changes to how some of our services run over the next 12 to 24 months or so. But the main thing that is that has been occupying us as sort of our biggest beyond the services project is Plan M, and that's M for metadata. It's not, my husband came in when I was running through these slides and said, Plan M, how many plans have you got? And so it's not, we haven't already been through plans A to L. This is M for metadata. So this is an issue that has been known in the UK bibliographic in the metadata sphere for a while, but the NBK has really brought it to the boil, because for the NBK to work to deliver the benefits to the community that we've been talking about, then as Shirley said, it needs a large aggregation of bibliographic metadata. But one of the problems is many libraries don't own the metadata they acquire from third parties. They license it instead, and those licenses have varying amounts of restrictiveness about who the data can be shared with, about how and when and where it can be shared. And unpicking that has taken a lot of our attention and effort over the past couple of years, and it is a very complex area. So what Plan M aims to do is to simplify and facilitate the flow of bibliographic metadata, ideally by removing restrictions and barriers to reuse. Now, the work we've been doing at the moment is mainly it's around the academic library sphere, but hopefully any opening up in the metadata flows will be of benefit to people in other sectors as well. So we've been working with stakeholders from all across the bibliographic system, bibliographic metadata ecosystem, libraries, but also data suppliers and publishers and aggregators. And again, I would like to thank everyone for their participation, because we have had some very enthusiastic, very valuable participation in this. And it's been absolutely vital for us to get that participation from across the spectrum, because this isn't just a problem. This isn't just something for libraries. This is something where we want to find a solution that works for everyone, because all of these stakeholders are valuable players and have a valuable part in this ecosystem. So at the moment, we have a team of consultants who have been undertaking a project for us looking at the economic side of this, because we need to thoroughly understand the current economic situation in order to be able to propose realistic scenarios for change. There's no point in us sort of sitting off in a room to one side and saying, we've thought of this brilliant plan that's going to work for everyone, but it involves everyone tripling their metadata spend. I mean, that simply can't happen. So what we need to do is we need to understand at the moment how much money is flowing, where it's flowing, and how we might be able to introduce efficiencies and suggest some realistic ways that this could change to everyone's benefit. That's what we're really hoping here. So we'll be sharing the outputs from the consultants on our blog. So at the moment, they've been conducting, or over the past few months, they've been conducting interviews with metadata suppliers, with primary publishers, that's the people who actually publish the material, what they call secondary publishers, who are the aggregators, with purchasing consortia, and with libraries. The last figure I heard was that 14 libraries had supplied responses to the economic modelling questions, and I did see the questions, and I would like to thank very, very deeply those 14 libraries for taking the time to do that. Some of those were quite complex, but thank you so much for taking part in this. So this week the consultants are running 2 webinars with invited participants. Some of you may be there, so I might see some of you in the next couple of days. And what they're going to be doing there is sharing their findings so far, discussing possibilities for future paths that we might take, and very importantly, asking for validation of the economic findings and models that they've had, because 14 responses is great, but it's also, we know it's only a small sample of what's out there. So the next step is to go to this next group of stakeholders and say, does this sound right to you? Does this validate with your experience? So we will share outcomes and future plans as soon as they are available. We're hoping to share the consultants' report and recommendations in November, and then sort of January to July-ish next year, we'll be doing some more consultation, some more stakeholder consultation, and looking to hopefully try and start putting some things in place in the second half of 2021. But we will keep you updated. So that's it from me and Shirley for now. All of our contact details are there. If you have any questions at any point, we would be delighted to hear from you. If you are a library who would like to participate in the NBK, if you'd like to send us your data, I would be extremely delighted to hear from you. Please do get in touch. The NBK email address is probably the best one to get us on, and the URLs are there as well if you want to go and have a look at the services. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Beth and Shirley. That was very interesting. I've only got one question so far. There might be a few more, might possibly sent to other people, but we've got one question from Jenny May. Is there a facility for reporting data errors in the MBK?
The way to do it at the moment is to email us on our help desk email, which is help@jisc.ac.uk. We used to have, a while ago in COPAC, we did have a report an error in this record button, and we had to turn it off because we got too many error reports, and we unfortunately we just couldn't cope with them all. We have been wondering whether there would be the potential to introduce that again in the future, but with the error report going straight to the library, because we can't actually, we don't make any changes to the data ourselves. We report the error to the library, they investigate. Once they've made the change, it's then reflected on the NBK the next time they send us an update. So there's no simple way at the moment, unfortunately, Jenny, but if you drop us an email, we will look into things.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from Natasha Burrow-Jones. Are you accepting only higher education and special libraries, or are you including further education libraries with special collections?
That is a good question. Thank you, Natasha. And it's something I should have mentioned. Shame on me, because Jisc is, FE is a very large part of the Jisc audience and strategy, of course. And the answer is yes. So we don't have any yet. We have had some interest from one FE library. But yes, again, if they do have special rare or research material, then yes, we would be very interested in hearing from them. Thank you for asking.
The more the merrier, I think, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
This is from Wasim Farouk. How detailed is the comparison tool, and what criteria is used to compare?
Shirley, do you want to take that one?
For Library Hub Compare, we're using the deduplicated database. The deduplication process itself is really very detailed, which is why there's a lot of duplicates in the database still, because we try and avoid merging records incorrectly. So the compare graphs are based on the deduplication within the database. If we've managed to deduplicate 30 records for an item, that will show you the spread of institutions that hold that item. So it is done on a record by record basis. So the graphs are quite detailed. For comparing particular collections. Something we've had interest in is the idea of being able to do much bigger collections on the basis of the sort of standard class mark information that's in the records. That's something we're interested in looking at over the next year or so, but it is dependent on the records having that classification information, and we need to investigate what's in there, what we could do to enhance that, to make that more useful. Does that answer the question?
I think so, I'd say so. And another one for you. Why is the metadata display, why is the metadata display duplicate values? I guess that means, why does the metadata display duplicate values? Oh, no, that's, well, I'll do that. Why is the metadata display duplicate values? You understand? I'm not sure how, I mean, that's what it says. So that's from Gitana Alamu. Why is it? Yeah, I'm not sure what.
If you, I don't think that's something that we can answer right now without without some examples. But if you'd like to send us an email with some examples to mbk@jisc.ac.uk, we'd be happy to look into that for you.
But also to be clear which lists it's relating to, whether it's Discover or whether it's cataloging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. He's added a bit more clarification. Okay. Shirley mentioned classmark-based comparison for larger libraries. I can probably take it off. We might ask you, directly about it. Yeah. Okay. There's another question. Dewey your Library Congress. That means so can you produce results in Dewey your Library Congress, or interchangeable, or?
It would be nice to be able to use both, but again, it does depend on the data. Now, because we are deduplicating the data, there is a reasonable chance that quite a big proportion of the records will have the necessary classification information, but it's something we need to investigate, and we haven't had the opportunity yet, but that is something to look at this coming year, I think.
Okay, I think that's about all we've got time for now. I think we've just come to the limit. There should be a short break now. If there are any more questions, I'm sure Shirley and Beth would be quite happy to receive emails for any further questions. And thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. So now we'll just have a 10-minute comfort break, and see you back at 22 for the Mercian presentation.